So people do ask, and I just thought it would be interesting to ask ChatGPT and see what ChatGPT had to say about this question. So let's just start with this. Buying investment property isn't just about finding a good deal, it's also about choosing the right ownership structure and understanding the rules that come with it. The decision between buying in your personal name or through a limited company or an LTD can dramatically affect your tax bill, your mortgage options, and your long-term returns. So let's just go through how ChatGPT broke this down. I'll give a little bit of my thoughts on it, but remember, these videos are not designed to replace you speaking to a qualified professional who understands your personal circumstances and therefore can give you the best guidance. Let me just caution everybody before we get started. Property values and rental income can go down as well as up, and you may not get back the money you invest. Always ensure you have a clear exit strategy and can cover the costs of the market changes. Your home or property may be repossessed if you don't keep up the repayments on your mortgage. This content is for information purposes only, and it's not financial advice. If you've watched my videos, you know I say it all the time. Don't get your financial, medical, or legal advice from some guy on TikTok or on social media. These platforms are great to find out about new concepts and explore things that maybe you didn't know about before, but you should never, ever, ever take the advice and just run with it. Always speak to a licensed professional. That way they can explain the nuances, the pros and the cons. I like to talk through these things and explain the pros and the cons from a perspective of someone that's worked in finance for 30 years and someone that does mortgages in the UK. So buying in personal names, here are some of the pros. So in theory, typically lower mortgage interest rates. So typically it's going to be cheaper than a limited company if you do the buy to let mortgage. A simpler process. So no need to set up a company or file extra accounts, and no company admin costs. You avoid the company's house filing fees and the annual accounting fees. So let's just talk through that a little bit. If you're buying in personal name and you've talked to a professional and they've said that that is the best option for you, it can be less burdensome because you're just buying it in your personal name. So you're not going to need to go out there and set up a limited company. You're not going to have to pay the associated fees with setting up that limited company. So when you go and speak to your professional and ask the questions, what they will do is unpack the specifics for you as an individual, what the pros might be. Now, you might be someone that, you don't feel that the admin side of it is too burdensome based on the benefits that you might find if you do decide to purchase an investment property in your personal name as opposed to purchasing it through a limited company. Let's go through some of the cons. There's restricted mortgage interest relief. So you can't fully deduct the mortgage interest rate. Higher tax rates on rental income profits are added to your personal income, and less flexibility on inheritance planning. So passing property to heirs can be expensive. Let me again add the caveat. These are just the answers that ChatGPT is telling us. Now, when you speak to your professional, they may be able to give you nuances, and depending on when you actually watch this video, the laws and the guidelines might have changed. But broadly speaking, these are going to be some of the cons of purchasing an investment property in your personal name. Now, when it talks about the restriction on mortgage interest rates, etc., the thing to think about here is if you go to a mortgage broker after speaking to a professional and you're looking to get a mortgage for an investment property in your personal name, there are going to be products that are available to you that may not be available if you're buying in a limited company, and vice versa. So this is where the separation of professional advice is really important. You'll speak to your solicitor about the legal side, so the legal contracts. They are experts in that area, and that's why you go to them. You'll then speak to an accountant about the accounting side of things, so the impacts on your taxes. Because quite often when people are asking these questions, in all honesty, it's because they've seen some ad or some property guru saying that this is the way forward. I'd always caution you to make sure that you've talked to a professional and explained what your long-term goals are. That way you can determine if the advice that you're getting online is actually appropriate to you. Let's move into the limited company side of things, because I imagine this is the bit that people really want to understand a lot better and a lot more. People want to understand if the limited company is going to be the best thing for them. So, some of the pros: reinvestment advantages. Leave the profits in the company to fund future purchases without paying personal tax immediately. As of the airing of this video, that's a general guideline. So, potential estate planning benefits: you can pass the company shares, which can be structured for tax efficiency. And remember, there's a lot of potentially and typically in these things because everyone's personal circumstances are going to be different. And these things can change depending on who's in government and depending on what the needs of society are at that point. But if you're thinking about purchasing an investment property in the name of a limited company, these are some of the pros. It's going to potentially give you some of the estate planning benefits. But what you'll see in the end of this video when I do my summary is that it's all about what your long-term goals are. So that's going to be what you're talking to your investment professional or your accountant about, your long-term goals. Here are some of the cons. I always end on the cons because I want these things to be in your mind. So higher mortgage rates and fewer lenders, extra admin costs, so the annual accounts, corporation tax returns, companies house filings, etc. And the funds aren't yours until you withdraw. So accessing profits means taking dividends or salary, which can create extra tax. I have a friend named Muzzy who's one of the people that does an excellent property course. And I remember in one of the interviews, he said, you can't pull a brick to buy some bread. And what he was saying is when you have your assets or all of your assets in a property, when the assets are in that property, if you need money, you can't just pull out a brick and take that to the store and buy something because they're all tied in your property. So while you might have a property that is appreciating in value or going up in value, and you have a low loan to value ratio. So maybe you owe 500,000 pounds on the property, but the property is worth 1 million. You have 500,000 pounds worth of equity in that property. You can't access that equity unless you take that money out. So that's one of the cons of this situation. So when you have a discussion with your professional, you're going to want to see long term if that's good for you or if that's bad for you. And as far as mortgage products, this is the bit you should be speaking to your mortgage broker about: the products, because your solicitor is going to take care of the legal stuff and the accountant will take care of the tax stuff, but they're not going to understand lending criteria. So the lending criteria around limited companies purchasing investment properties is different than when you are buying a residential property. So for example, there's something called a SIC code, SIC, a SIC code. Lenders will look for specific SIC codes on that limited company. They will look for things like how long have you been trading. Some will do day one. So from day one of setting up that company, they will allow you to buy property. There's so many different things to consider, but the interest rates are going to be different and the products are going to be different. So this is why it's not a one size fits all. It's not a go on a property course, pay 5,000 pounds, and then just run out and start doing it. You need to speak to a professional and you need to understand both the pros and the cons, which is why I asked ChatGPT that question to see what outputs it would give. Because I do find that a lot of people, that's how they do their research. They just Google something or they just ask ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is going to get some things wrong. It's going to get some things right, but quite frequently, it's going to give general guidelines that may not apply to you as an individual. So you might ask yourself, how do I decide? How do I decide if I should buy it in my personal name or if I should buy through a limited company when making investments in property. The right choice depends on your income tax band. So if you're a higher earner, it often benefits more from the limited company. Your investment horizon. So are you looking for a short-term return or a long-term return? Portfolio size. So personal name often suits 1 to 2 properties. Limited becomes more efficient for larger portfolios. And your exit strategy. Let's break that down a little bit. So, firstly, are you planning on buying multiple properties over time? Or do you know realistically you just want to have one more property? So, in the event of, let's just say you have a property, your girlfriend has a property, you get married, you're going to rent both properties out, you're going to then live in another property that you buy, and then you buy a third property. So you wouldn't be able to convert the existing ones into limited companies. But when you're buying that next one and that next one and that next one, do you want to put those in a limited company? Because you have a goal of eventually having 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 properties? Or do you know that you want to mitigate your risk so you don't want to put all of your money and all of your investments in property? So, you're happy just having two, those are in the personal names. That's all you're ever going to want. You may feel or find that your accountant might guide you in that direction. But the key is having a plan. So there's two things you always want to have when you are going into property investing. You want to have a plan and you want to have a team. So you want to surround yourself with a great accountant. I would add, it's not just about having a generalist accountant. So I find this quite frequently that, you'll go to an accountant's website and they do absolutely everything. They're generalists, not knocking that. My guidance would be, if you are looking to get the answer to should you buy in limited names or should you buy in personal name, go to an accountant that specializes in property. There's so many changes to rules and regulations and HMRC. If you go to an accountant that is a generalist, especially if it's a one-man band, it's different if it's a large firm and they have different departments. But if it's a one-man band, realistically, they're probably not going to be able to keep up with all the different regulatory items in everything that they do. So it would be advisable to find an accountant who is a property professional. The way that you can usually tell is by going to their website. If when you go on their website, their general website, not a web page, if you go on their general website and they list everything, we do probate, we do this, we do that, we do the third, and it's one individual, I would suggest that that's not who you want to work with. And in deciding, make sure that you're open and honest with all three professionals that you speak to. So when you speak to the solicitor, make sure that you're open and honest about what you already have in place, what your plans are. Same thing for the accountant. And specifically, if you come to me as a broker and you don't feel that you can actually be honest with me, then you probably shouldn't be working with me. A professional can only help you based on the information they have. So if you don't give them all of the information, even if it's something that you don't think is important, they're not going to be able to give you the best advice. And it doesn't really help you and it doesn't help them provide a great service. So, what are my final thoughts? Understand that HMRC tax rules, they change, and ignorance is expensive. So there's a saying in law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So what that means is, just because you don't know it, it doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you. Speak to a qualified accountant, ideally someone who specializes in property. Work with an experienced mortgage broker who knows lenders' criteria for both personal and limited company. So the bottom line is, don't guess. Get the facts, get professional advice, and make your decision with a full picture in mind. It's really easy if you spend any time on the internet to just feel as if, property is the way to go. You jump in, you be a millionaire, you'll be posting on Instagram about all the properties you have and how big your portfolio is. The truth is, it's not that easy. Investing in property is risky. You can make money or you can lose money, but either way, it takes a lot of work. So you should never enter into one of these situations, either personally or putting it through a limited company because you've just been on a course or you've seen online that this is the way forward. You need to think it through. If you're married or if you're, if you're a close family, have the conversation within the family because these decisions will impact the people that are part of your estate when you do your estate planning. And it's always good to make sure that you have the input and the support of those people around you because that's going to give you the best probability of being successful. Over the long term, historically, property has been a sound investment, but anything can happen. So you don't want to do it on an emotional basis. There's some really great property groups out there with property professionals in there that have gone down this road and are currently doing it and can give you advice. But as a mortgage broker, I would say if you come to me and you ask me, should I do personal name or should I do limited company? I'm going to say I'm not licensed to give you that advice. So I will refer you to a property professional. But once you get that advice and you come to me, I will find you the best lender that meets your circumstances based on what your long-term needs are. It's a similar thing with pensions. I can't give advice on pensions. So when you speak to your mortgage broker, understand what they're licensed to discuss with you. So don't feel that they're being difficult or being evasive if they just say it's not something that I can advise you on and refer you to someone else. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I've been in finance for over 30 years. So what you'll find is when you speak to me or when you come to me, I'm able to give you a breadth of information and just some life experience. I'm 50 odd years old. So I've seen things come and I've seen things go. This whole thing with AI and people just getting all of their advice from ChatGPT, it sometimes worries me because I just think that people aren't doing their due diligence and actually having the meaningful conversations with professionals that they need to have. And it can be very, very costly. So make sure that if you are planning on doing anything around finance, anything medically, or anything legal, in the legal field, make sure that you speak to a professional. And if you've watched this video and you found it useful, even if you've just watched for a couple of minutes, please subscribe. This is a really small channel. And as you can see by the videos that I make, what I like to do is talk you through different concepts. And these are things that usually my clients are asking me regularly. So it just gives me an opportunity to answer their question and also share that information. If you're a broker, or if you're an accountant, or if you're a solicitor, and you've looked at this and said, ChatGPT didn't get that right, put your comments in the comment section. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure that you support this channel. Share it with friends and family, especially young people who may feel that they're unable to get on the property ladder. As I always say, Gen Z is not Generation Rent, and there is an opportunity to get on the property ladder. It just takes some discipline. It takes some planning and surrounding yourself with the right people. So make sure you get the right information from the right people. Thanks for watching. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I'd really appreciate if you subscribe and share this video with friends and family.